I'm so excited today to be joined by Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. Liz, so great to be here with you today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
I want to jump right in because it's about 6 months since you were fired from your job by the Trump administration. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm adjusting to a new normal where nothing is normal. I kind of found a new platform for my voice on social media, which has been really exciting, but the world around me is chaos, and I know that a lot of us are navigating through that together.
Now, remind folks, why were you fired in the first place back in March?
So, my job as pardon attorney was a non political position. I planned to stay on under the Trump administration. And early in the new Trump administration, I was asked to make a recommendation to the attorney general that she reinstate the gun ownership rights of the actor Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's a friend of the president. He's actually been made an ambassador to Hollywood, which is not a real ambassadorship. But he lost his right to own a gun when he was convicted of a crime involving domestic violence. And he was seeking to get his gun rights back, and there was a request that I recommend that he gain his rights back. I know how dangerous it is when domestic abusers have guns, and so I wasn't willing to make that recommendation, and within a few hours I was fired from my position.
Now, looking back on that moment 6 months ago, did you ever imagine the Department of Justice would take the turn that it's really taken today, where a lot of folks are accusing this administration of weaponizing the justice system to go after political opponents or folks that they don't agree with?
I did not appreciate at that time that it would get so bad so quickly. I was not the first career expert to be fired, but I still didn't see the magnitude of the firings that were coming and the installment of Trump loyalists in pretty much every position in the Justice Department in a way that has enabled him to really use it as his personal law firm.
I want to talk to you specifically about the James Comey indictment that was handed down over the past week or so. Now, that indictment to me really was concerning for a number of reasons, but specifically the one that Donald Trump arguably publicly told Pam Bondi, go and prosecute Comey, my political opponent. And well, it happened. What were your reactions to the Comey indictment?
Yeah, Donald Trump has really just flipped the Justice Department on its head. The way that prosecutions are supposed to work is that prosecutors follow facts and law and evidence, and if there are charges to bring, they do it on that basis. But what Donald Trump has made known to his Attorney General and to the staff of the Department of Justice is that he has specific targets in mind, and he wants the department to build cases against those people at all costs, even if the facts and the law don't support them. So this was really shocking because there were many career prosecutors in the department, including the acting U.S. attorney, who had advised Pam Bondi and the president that there was no there. There was no case against James Comey. So Donald Trump fired all of the people who were standing in his way of getting an indictment and essentially installed a sham prosecutor, a woman named Lindsay Halligan, who was one of his personal attorneys, who has no experience as a prosecutor, no experience in federal criminal law at all, and instructed her to go in there and get an indictment. She had to apparently be tutored in how to present a case to the grand jury and in all of the steps of what she was doing. And she did that at the request of Donald Trump, not because facts or law supported it, but because that's what her boss was telling her to do. And that's really just not how our justice system is supposed to work.
Well, I'm going to ask you to put on your public defender hat here for just a second, because me, coming from my attorney background, the first thing I would do as an attorney is file a motion to dismiss for selective prosecution here. It seems pretty clear, even though it's a very high bar to meet. What are your thoughts about an argument like that in this case?
It is a very high bar to get a case dismissed on the basis of selective prosecution or vindictive prosecution, but it's hard to imagine a clearer case of that than the one that we have here. Donald Trump really hasn't done himself any favors in terms of building a strong case by being out there in the public tweeting about James Comey and his desire to see James Comey prosecuted. He has said James Comey's guilty. He's guilty as hell is the expression he's used. He instructed the attorney general to prosecute him at all costs. So he's made it clear that this is a vendetta that's very personal for him. And that is a real vulnerability when it comes to litigating motions to dismiss this indictment.
I got to ask you, because you were at Maine Justice, and to the extent that you can talk about kind of the hierarchy when seeking an indictment of this magnitude, because traditionally U.S. attorneys can present a case in front of a grand jury, secure their indictment, and move forward. But oftentimes, when it's a highly big profile case like this one, they would have to get approvals from Maine Justice. Could you talk a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, historically, there have been a lot of institutional guardrails to make sure that a prosecutor can't go rogue and indict a high profile person for political reasons or for any reason other than that the facts and laws support it. All of those guardrails have been intentionally stripped away inside this Justice Department. The career experts who would usually weigh in on and sign off on this type of action have been fired or sidelined, and the normal processes are no longer in place of checks to make sure that the Justice Department's powers aren't abused. In this case, all of the career people in the department who wanted to put a stop to this indictment were sidelined before they had the opportunity to do that, and the department has plowed forward anyway. It's just a sign that the Justice Department really is Donald Trump's personal revenge tool at this point in time. He's using it to dole out rewards to people who are his friends in the form of pardons and dismissal of cases, and he's using it to punish his enemies through criminal investigations and prosecutions, and nobody in the building is pushing back on him anymore.
Well, I do have to ask you about the pushing back part of it, because a lot of people are saying, well, why haven't we seen mass resignations within the Eastern District of Virginia or within Maine Justice? If you were at the pardon attorney's office, leading the pardon attorney's office today, and something like this were to have happened, would you have resigned in protest, or do you believe that we need the argument that we need strong ethical attorneys in government to still kind of enforce some of those guardrails?
I think that's a very hard decision for a lot of lawyers inside the Justice Department. Many people are doing calculations about whether they can do more good by staying or by going. But my view of it is once you compromise your integrity, you cannot get it back. So as a career attorney, you cannot allow yourself to be put in a position where your integrity is compromised. And that may mean that you need to quit or you need to be fired. I think for those who are trying to hang on to their jobs so that they can do some good from the inside, if they're able to navigate that without compromising their values and their integrity, then I respect that decision. In my case, I was trying very hard to hang on to my job to protect my team. I had about 45 people working on my team, and everyone was very worried about losing their jobs, about getting cut under the Elon Musk Doge chopping block. And I was really trying to stay in place to protect my team to the best of my abilities, but that became untenable when this situation arose involving Mel Gibson. I knew that I was not willing to compromise my own ethics and integrity to make a recommendation that I didn't believe in. I knew the consequences might be that I would be fired, and I was. And I think that that was, for me, the right decision, but it's a hard decision because, we're in a very challenging time and we need good people inside the Justice Department.
Well, I want to talk to you specifically about your job that you were fired from, and that's being pardon attorney. Could you walk folks through what does that pardon process look like? Just from a high level, what's the step-by-step? If a criminal defendant is serving time and wants to secure a pardon from the administration, what happens?
Yeah, pardons are part of the president's prerogative under the Constitution, and the president has really unchecked power to grant pardons to whomever he chooses. But historically, there's always been a process in place that runs through the Justice Department to try to ensure that the pardon power is not totally politicized, that they're not just given to friends and family of the president, but really are used for people who are deserving. And the height of the pardon power was under President Obama, who used commutations of sentence, which is just a reduction in a prison sentence, to correct some of the excesses of criminal sentencing, outdated mandatory minimum sentences, and that sort of thing. Since then, there have been a lot of uses of the pardon power that have raised eyebrows, and the role of the Justice Department is to try to ensure that the pardon power is ultimately used to grant second chances to people who are truly deserving. That hasn't always been the way that it has worked, and it's certainly not the way that it's working now under the Trump administration. The Office of the Pardon Attorney, where I used to work, has largely been sidelined in the clemency review process, and instead, this president is doling out pardons to people who are political loyalists, donors, friends of his, that sort of thing.
Well, and I do want to ask you about that because I think everyone can agree that every president issues a pardon that is controversial. I mean, there are controversial president and pardons with Democrats, Republicans, you name it. But I think something that I found troubling with the president's pardons this time around is the amount of restitution that's actually being essentially wiped off the books, right? These individuals, for example, Todd and Julie Chrisley, they had lengthy prison sentences. Their prison sentences were wiped away, but so was millions of dollars in restitution payments that were supposed to go back to the federal government and victims. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, one of the things that Donald Trump is doing is he is focusing on people who've committed large-scale financial crimes with his pardon grants. And most of those are people who owe very substantial amounts of money to the victims of their crimes. In some cases, those are taxpayers. In some cases, it's people who are the victims of financial frauds, people who've lost their money due to a criminal fraud scheme. Donald Trump's pardons have the effect of wiping out the obligation to repay that money to the victims. And I've gone through all of the pardons that he's granted to date, or at least all the ones that we know about, and calculated it all up. And he has forgiven over $1.3 billion in debts that are owed to victims of crime and taxpayers by people who are convicted of large-scale white-collar crimes. And these aren't, for the most part, people who are very sympathetic. There's a guy named Trevor Milton who defrauded investors in his startup company. It was supposedly going to build the world's first electric-powered semi-truck, but the whole thing turned out to be a fraud. Trevor Milton stole effectively over $600 million from his investors. He did not pay back a dime of it before he got a pardon from Donald Trump. But he donated $1.8 million to Trump's campaign, and very shortly after, he got a full pardon, which wiped out his obligation to repay that nearly $700 million in debt.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are lots of other examples like this, and it's really shocking to see this pardon economy that has developed. People are essentially involved in this pay-for-play system where pardons are being granted out to people who are willing to spend money or support the right causes. There's another guy named Paul Walsack in Florida who ran a healthcare company, and he was skimming money off the tops of paychecks of his doctors and nurses that he employed. He used the money to buy a yacht and all sorts of luxury goods. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison by a judge who said, "I need to send you to prison to send the message that wealth is not a get out of jail free card in this country." Days later, Paul Walsack's mother paid $1 million to attend a dinner at Mar-a-Lago with the president. And days after that, her son got a full pardon and doesn't have to pay back any of that money.
Well, Liz, final question for you. What's your message to folks who are really concerned in this country right now about the state of the Justice Department? They're concerned that the Justice Department may go after even an everyday protester, for example, because they're going after what the Trump administration is, the agenda the administration is pushing. So what's your message to folks who are concerned in this moment?
I'm really concerned too. It's really hard to know where this is going to stop. Is Donald Trump going to prosecute everybody who speaks out against his policies, everybody who didn't vote for him? I think that all we can do as Americans is to stay informed and stay vigilant and follow what's happening closely. We now know that we can't take for granted many of the things that we once thought were unchangeable about our justice system. I think a lot of our faith in the justice system has relied on our leaders using it in good faith and operating in good faith, and that's no longer the case. It's a very scary time, but I think if we stay informed and continue to speak up about what's going on and what we're seeing, that we will find a path through this.
Liz Oyer, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hey folks, Aaron Parnas here. Thank you so much for watching The Parnas Perspective. Please consider subscribing to support our work as we grow this independent news media entity into something that rivals mainstream every single day. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.